As you can see in Nigeria, there are so many things going wrong, particularly in this era of COVID-19, and a lot of workers are being sacked, allegations, counter allegations, all of that. I want to start with this question. I want to tell you, what's your take, you as the DG, and also on union leader? What's your take on the minister's allegation that union refused the transformation and sacking of workers in the Kaduna refining company of petrochemical? Did you get that?
Yeah, thank you so very much, AIT. I quite appreciate your bringing me into this. I want to sincerely say that it is unfortunate that we are having the kind of comment the minister made, because I am one that believes that he who lives in glass houses must not throw stones. First, the first duty of a union leader, and that's what the minister should get very, very rightly, is that they protect their workers, their members from unlawful dismissals. They protect the job security of their members. They enhance the welfare and benefits of their members. Those are the critical and the foundation rules of engagement between a union leader and their shop floor members. So to that effect, the union did not do any wrong in writing to the minister, flagging him of what was happening in KRPC. So the assertion by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Chief Timipriye Sylvia, that the workers of KRPC have not worked for 3 years and yet collecting salaries, shows that either he is not attuned with the Nigerian Labour Act, the extant labor laws, which of course guide the employment relationships between employers, the unions, or that the minister was simply mischievously covering up the failure of the owner of the enterprise, which is of course the federal government, from the Nigerian people. Section 17 makes it abundantly clear that it is obligatory on the employer to provide work, and except where a collective agreement provides otherwise, every employer, unless a worker has broken his contract, shall provide work suitable to the worker's capacity on everyday basis, including public holidays, on which the worker presents himself and is fit for work. And if the employer fails to provide work as aforesaid, he shall pay to the worker in respect of each day he failed to provide work the same wages at the same rate as would be payable if the worker had performed a day's job. So from that section that I'm quoting, if the employer, which is the federal government, was unable to provide work, the onus, of course, is on the federal government to declare the workers of the enterprise redundant under Section 20 of the Labour Act. That section defines redundancy as the involuntary and permanent loss of employment caused by excessive manpower. It also places an obligatory duty on the owner of the enterprise, which is government in this case, to inform the unions to obey the principle of last in, first out, which again would have meant that if they were to sack anybody from KRPC, Those employed recently were supposed to have been the first to go, though the principle of relative merit will be taken into consideration. And then the unions will now, with the management, will now be able to discuss the redundancy benefits for their members. I'm not aware that the federal government has said it could no longer repair the refinery. Please recall that in 2015 or thereabout, this government said they were going to ensure that the refineries work by 2020. They've shifted it to 2023. So it is the government that is keeping the workers and giving them hope that we shall fix the refineries. So if government has decided, therefore, to keep the workers, will the workers on their own say they are going to work off the jobs? So the onus is on government to be able to say, we don't want you anymore. Sit down, let us discuss, take your redundancy benefits, and let me do whatever I want to do with my plant. So on sacking of those KRPC workers, I think the minister was just trying to cover up, like I said, the inefficiency of government in not being able to fix a refinery since 2015 to this particular time. They've not been able to build another refinery since the inception of the democratic dispensation, since 1999 to this particular time. Remember, please, that this same government, while it was in opposition, in 2014, expressed very grievous anger and lampooned President Jonathan for exiting the then GMD from the NNPC. So how come that this administration now has exited about 850 workers from KRPC as quoted by the unions? Then he's saying that the unions have no right to be able to speak about it. That will not be fair. That will not be right. And I think that as a matter of fact, the unions should be praised for ensuring that they spoke against unlawful dismissal of a people and that they are asking government to be able to do something about it and ensure that no further members of theirs will be removed without discussions with the union, because that's what the labor law says. But the truth again is that the reason the refineries are not working is not because of workers. Let us get something straight. The reason is that government is focusing on collection of rent. It's focusing on only exportation of crude to earn forex that will now go into the federation account so that it will make money available for sharing by FAC on monthly basis. There have not been serious efforts to be able to optimize the functionality of the refineries. They've not been able to tell Nigerians how they want to ensure that the hydrocarbon industry adds a lot of value to what we have on ground. So the changes, for instance, that you see in the NNPC, removing their management from time to time, based on parochialism, nepotism, political considerations, perpetuating import-driven oil and gas products to feed the political class, as you have seen about subsidy. My dear brother, there is no way the model we use in running the refineries now can make the refineries work. That is why the unions saw in 2004, 2005, and made recommendations to the government and other successive administration of Nupeng and Pegasan have also said so, that they need to commercialize the refineries using the NLNG model, because that model seems to be working. So the question is, why did government not take that advice? Why did government not take that route? If they had done this since 2003, 2004, or 2005, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I just believe that government is not serious, and you can see this by their inability to stem the tide of vandalism, which is increasing. Yet they have a retinue of security agencies. They have not been able to stop crude theft because it pays for people to tamper with the crude of IOCs and the NMPC, and government is watching helplessly. I just think that somebody is not telling Nigerians the truth, and we need to be able to get serious about this.
Doctor, you know, the government is also doing something to ensure that there is transparency in government. Just as you have made some submission, I just wanted to describe the level of transparency in this present administration from 2015 up to date.
Well, let me not restrict myself to just this administration, so that it wouldn't seem as if we are talking about the government in power alone. But the truth is, by our simple reflective definition of transparency, government must begin to be open to the people. And the people should also know what the government is doing on their behalf by providing the right information. Accountability, on the other hand, imposes a duty on government to tell the people what government is doing with their taxes and oil and gas revenues and how they disburse them. Well, this is one of the things we don't have. They're just taking light where I am, but we'll continue. Okay, we'll continue. Now, transparency, like I said, begins with the elections of the politicians into positions of authority. When technical judgments now enthrone political office holders instead of the wish of the majority to freely elect their office leaders, then we are honestly in the deepest valley of transparency. Why did I say that? The government is supposed to make proactive disclosures to the people. You try as much as possible to write agencies of government for information, which will empower you to interrogate issues of transparency and accountability. I am not very sure that you will get any response. Even when you invoke the Freedom of Information Act, the disclosures will not be forthcoming. So our contracting and licensing processing in extractive industry also fall very short of the fiscal transparency principle. To that effect, and with what we have said, one could say that there are yet, or that Nigeria is yet to arrive at the doorstep of transparency.
Hello, Doctor.
I'm hearing you.
Yes, I want to also ask, do you think the government is winning the war against corruption in Nigeria?
Well, first, let us appreciate that Nigeria needs to get rid of corruption, because corruption gets the people poorer. It kills the people through bad roads, inefficient healthcare system, inability to have good and functional educational system. It places on the people hunger, because people siphon the money onto their own various pockets. It causes increase in infant and maternal mortality rates. To that effect, we must support this government in its fight against corruption. However, the challenge in facing this country today is that we have created very corrupt systems of bad governance, which promotes nepotism, mediocrity, conflict, poverty, escalation, and underdevelopment. Whereas the ideal political system should support and promote good governance, economic development for the people, poverty alleviation, savings for future development of generations to come. But we can see what has just happened in the last few weeks. The recent sharing of money meant for the development of Niger Delta people by a few individuals within the NDDC. The accusation and counter-accusations within that organization. The alleged auctioning of seized assets by SY acting chairman of the EFCC. The alleged involvement of the Attorney General of the Federation in an untoward manner. All these are accusations going back and forth among officials of state. Therefore, one cannot therefore concisely point to a proper anti-graft fight with all these that we are seeing. For instance, when the issue of corruption was flagged by the former NDDC MD, instead of addressing the issue by the minister in charge of Niger Delta Ministry, he took a swipe at Mrs. Joy Nunez and went into her personal life. And of course, that was the one that now brought into light something that was hidden that Nigerians never knew about how money was being squandered. Money that was meant for the Niger Delta people. We heard about how 3 billion was shared, or over 3 billion was shared improperly. They used them to palliatively help themselves. Now, if 3 billion naira was properly utilized, it will establish so many SMEs that will take some of our unemployment youths from the streets. As far as I'm concerned, and honestly speaking, I think what has happened in the last few days has taken corruption to the next level in our nation. I can tell you for free that personality clashes, anger over not spreading the leakages across political pipelines, struggle for power will have been responsible for what has happened rather than really serving the people. But I want to also make one case very clear. Sadly, whether the issues are real, whether they are fabricated or laden with conspiracy theories, these are tectonic financial stories that have seriously damaged the image of Nigeria, and it is sinking deeper into the corrupt countries index. That is not fair to this nation. Besides, we cannot be talking about fighting corruption when the judiciary, that is supposed to be a critical arm of the same government, aligning with the principles of anti-corruption, with all the amount of assailable evidence at its disposal, still have difficulty in securing convictions of corrupt persons, especially political office holders. It is sad to see the judiciary undermine its own rules on the ban against granting of stay of executions, for instance, by administration of the Criminal Justice Act of 2015. This act was supposed to fast track, if I'm not mistaken, the prosecution of politically exposed individuals and other corrupt practices in our nation. But does it not bother anybody that it takes about 10 to 15 years to prosecute some of these, our elites? How can the country watch helplessly as courts grant perpetual restraining orders on the police and anti-graft agencies from investigating, arresting, and prosecuting politically exposed offenders? I shudder when I hear people say this is the first administration to commence the investigation and criminal proceedings against ministers and top military leaders in this nation. I honestly wonder where those people were, or whether they were really in this planet when the ICPC under Obasanjo, for instance, charged 3 ministers, a former national secretary of the then ruling party, a permanent secretary, It also prosecuted a former Inspector General of Police, charged and jailed him, with many other figures. President Jonathan, on his own part, also, remember the pension scam, where they had to dismiss Mena, and this government brought him back until the public cried out before they did the needful. So let us not be clouded by all these prejudices and psychophancy. Let us stop pampering this government under whose funds were recovered and being relooted. So if you ask for my own advice for our government to run, for oil and gas industry to move forward, I believe that we need to urgently, without further delay, pass the industry bill. Remember that the petroleum industry bill started as the Oil and Gas Reform Committee on April 24, 2000, and then the OGIC in 2006. We need to change the model of running the refineries to the NLNG option as canvassed by the unions. We need to stop spurious and perpetual restraining orders that support corruptive activities. We need to deal with union matters according to extant labor laws, trade union and trade disputes acts. We need to embrace an open dialogue with the oil and gas unions. And lastly, we need to start thinking very seriously on how to restructure this nation in line with true federalism.